And so today I have the pleasure to give you 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant. The good thing about talking to somebody that's gone where you're going, that's done what you're about to do, attempting to do, or in the process of doing, is they can teach you the things that sped up the time for them. Things that took them 2 years to figure out, they can teach you in an hour. Things that took them weeks to figure out, they can teach you in a 5-minute conversation. And so it collapses the time for you. So it is my great pleasure, okay, to collapse some of this time for you. So the very first tip, I'm going to do 10 of them today. All right. So the very first tip that I want to give you on how to start your career as a real estate virtual assistant are just simply giving you the keys to start. Okay. So I'm going to go over this briefly. I go over this in detail in my masterclass. It's free if you want to attend, link below. But this is going to be the brief synopsis of the keys to start. All right. So here we go. So the very first thing is you need to make sure that you have your EIN and LLC. Okay. Get those things squared away. I know some of you say, well, you can start as a sole proprietary. Sure. Okay. But you're dealing with contracts and money and thousands of dollars. You want to make sure that you have that protected, right? That business protected within an LLC to protect your personal assets. Okay. So LLC EIN, that's going to be your tax identification number. It's like your social security number for your business. You have to make sure you get that as well. And you can Google how to do that in your state. Some of you can do it on your own. Some of you may want to hire somebody to do it, right? It just depends on your risk appetite, right? I don't do it myself, but there's a lot of people that do. So the next thing is you want to make sure you have a website. And now we live in a day and age. It was different from when I started. When I started, I had a WordPress site. But now it's like you have Wix, you have Squarespace, you have all of these different template, drag and drop kind of websites that are really easy for somebody to manipulate. And even if you're not tech savvy, you can jump in there and do it. Or you can have somebody that's tech savvy do it, and they can typically get through that pretty fairly quickly, right? So the next thing you need to have is your email, and we use Google Drive. We always recommend using G Suite, right? Google Suite. The reason why it's good is because with Google Suite, you're going to have your email where you can have it where it's masked with your domain. So it can be, mine, Tiffany @yourcompanyname.com. And then you also get all the perks of that. So you're getting the Google Sheets, the Google Docs, you're getting Google Forms, right? So we set up our entire automation system for our intake of our contracts with Google products, okay? And even though we've invested in different softwares along the way, we still keep our intake and with Google products. Like, it just works so well. So G Suite is our recommendation, but you do want to make sure that you have some level of organization in a storage drive, even if it's Dropbox or something else. And then also professional email. You don't want to use @gmail.com. You want a nice professional email. All right. Next 3 tips. Okay. Business bank account. All right. Now that you have your EIN and your LLC, head on over to your local bank and get your business bank account. Okay. Now you might go with the bank that you already have a relationship with, or you might decide, you know what, I want to try some other banks, because sometimes a bank has great perks for a personal account, but they don't necessarily have great perks for a business account. So be sure to shop around and find the best fit for you. But at minimum, just head on over to the bank that you're at already and set up your business bank account. All right. I have several accounts because I use a special cash flow method, okay, that I teach in my masterclass. But for somebody just starting out, you need to not my masterclass, but my mentorship. But for somebody just starting out, you need to at least have a checking and a savings in a business account. All right. Keys to start, number 5 is contract training. Okay. You need to make sure you get your contract training. And I have a tip that I'm going to go over with you in a few that's going to go in detail of what that training needs to look like. But you need to learn your state specific contract training. So every state is different. And there's some states where there's variations of the contract, even within the state, right? And so you have to do your own investigation skills to learn what that looks like. But stick with me. I'm going to show you the standard of what you should be looking for when you're looking for the contract training. Okay. All right. And then the last thing is just to go get you some clients. All right. So those are the 5 keys to actually start the business. That's the really good thing about this sector is you don't need a ton of money to start. You don't need to have a brick and mortar. You don't need to have fancy software. You don't need all of those things. And so it's just one of my favorite things about the sector. All right. So those are the 5 simple keys to start. in the real estate VA sector. Okay. So for our next tip, all right, tip number two on 10 tips to start your career as a real estate virtual assistant is to consider getting E&O insurance. All right. In my mentorship, I strongly recommend it. It is almost like a requirement. Okay. But I do strongly recommend people have E&O insurance. And what that is it stands for errors and omissions. And it just means that you're dealing with contracts, you're dealing with a lot of legality, right? You're dealing with a lot of money that could be lost if there is a mistake made. And if you make an error, that is basically a mistake on you just doing your job and handling the process, you make a mistake that costs your agent, which could subsequently cost one of the buyers or the sellers money, or it could subsequently have them lose the deal or the house falls through. You just never know, right? Sometimes what you think is a small mistake can have a large impact if you don't have the proper training, or if you just, it's just human nature that sometimes we make a mistake, right? And so you want to have something in place. So having an LLC is going to protect your personal assets from being impacted by any lawsuits or anything like that. But E&O insurance goes an additional extra layer of protection, even within your LLC, even within your company, where if they were to say, hey, this is your fault, you can now file a claim with your E&O insurance, and your E&O insurance will do an investigation. And if you are deemed to be at fault, they will pay out a claim, right? So you don't have to worry about that typically hitting your gross revenue or what you need to use for payroll if you're hiring contractors and have other TCs and stuff you need to pay. It's a great way to protect yourself as you go into this venture to make sure you're protected. And so there's some very popular ones that are out. Let me share here. Let me share this one. So this is one that's pretty popular, Hiscox. Okay. But I've just added two more so you can just kind of take a peek at what their quotes might be. Bburk, I don't know if I'm saying that right. And then Nationwide has some really popular E&O insurance programs. But what you want to do is you want to go ahead and investigate and get your quote together. And before you take your first client, you want to make sure that you have that E&O insurance. So you don't need to get it while you're still in training, while you're still trying to figure out exactly what you want to do, or what services you're going to be offering, or maybe you're still in contract training. Don't get it that soon, right? It's almost like buying a car. You're going to get the insurance when you need it. You're going to get the insurance when you're actually about to get the keys to the car. So when you're actually about to work with the client, that's when you want to lock in your E&O insurance. It does not take a lot to set up, does not take a lot to establish. We probably pay less for ours because we had it for almost a decade and we've never filed a claim, right? But for somebody new starting out, I'm noticing that the mentees are getting quoted about $20 to $30 a month, right? So it's a very small fee for peace of mind that if you make a mistake, you're going to be safe. You're going to be safe, right? All right. So that is, what is that? Tip number 2. That's tip number 2. So let's move on to tip number 3, right? 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant. This is the one that, and we were speaking earlier, I promised you I will go a little bit deeper in, right? So tip number 3 is learn your state-specific contract. Learn your state-specific contract. Not only do I want you to learn it, I want you to know it almost like an attorney. I want you to know that thing from front to back. If somebody were to quote a clause in that contract that really wasn't there, I want you to recognize that what they said was false. That's how well you should know the contract. You should be able to say, that's not in the contract. What you might be thinking about is this clause, and this clause says this. This is how well I want you to know the contract. Let me tell you why. Most agents don't know the contract that well. Okay. Let me also tell you why. Is because your greatest marketing tactic when you have a real estate VA company, okay, is understanding the contract. That is going to make you more money than any promotion you can do, any lunch and learn you can host, any email campaign you set up. Knowing the contract is going to make you the most money because it's going to keep your client coming back to you time and time again because they know you can steward them well because you understand the contract, you understand the risk, you understand who handles what, you understand why they need something, you understand why they don't need something. You understand all parties involved and you understand that contract. And so learning your state-specific contract is going to be the most important thing you can do. I'm going to give you a huge tip. I'm going to give you a huge tip on making sure that you have a adequate training. When you're looking for your training for your state specific contract, what you want to look for is when you hit play, okay, on whatever the training is, or if it's live, right? When you step into this class, what you want to hear is them saying on page 1, paragraph 1, this is what it means. Okay, this is what it means. On page 1, paragraph 2, this is what this clause means. On page 1, paragraph 3, this is what this clause means. And if you really want to get fancy, there's some trainings out there that go line by line, right? But for the most part, you at least want it to go clause by clause. What you don't want is a training that they start out and they say, so on page 1, you're going to learn about the escrow and how much the buyer is going to be paying, and if they have third-party financing. Okay, that's page 1, guys. And then page 2, that's not detailed enough. You're not going to be able to retain clients like that. You're not going to be able to get on the phone with confidence and actually close a potential client if that's how well you know the contract. There's a level, there's a confidence that you're going to have when you're even speaking to someone, telling them about the service you offer, if you understand the contract like I just explained it, clause by clause. Okay, so clause by clause is the standard that you want to see when you are looking for state-specific contract training. That is tip number 3. Okay, on 10 tips to start your career as a real estate virtual assistant. All right, and so now I want to get into our next tip. So tip number 4 on what you need to start your career as a real estate virtual assistant is this one. All right, understanding the different services. So understanding all the things that the agent is going to deem as a standard practice for a real estate VA. Right? There's a few that this just is going to feel standard to them. Doesn't mean you have to offer these services, but you need to understand what they are so you can investigate those services and see if it's something you can launch with. Sometimes you start with the services you feel the most gifted in, you have the most confidence about, and then you can add in the other services later. But if not, all right, you might want to launch with everything. You need to know what they are. So here are the top 4 categories. You have transaction coordinator. All right. So that is a neutral party that is helping the file move along the process. They're making sure everybody follows those dates correctly. They're making sure that everybody has the documents and stuff that they need. They are hired by either the buyer's agent or the seller's agent in most cases. Okay, they're hired by the buyer's agent or the seller's agent. There's some niche TC services that you can offer for investors and different things like that. But for the most part, a buyer or seller's agent has hired you to manage that contract, to protect them and their clients and make sure that everybody gets what they need and the process goes smooth, right? You handle the administration of the process. So that's a transaction coordinator. You also have the listing coordinator. And what a listing coordinator does is when the home hits the market, okay, right now we don't have a buyer, right? We're looking for a buyer. So when a home hits the market and you're in the process of looking for a buyer, it's in the listing phase. And that's when you can support the listing agent and be the listing coordinator. You help with any data entry, you help with any marketing, you help with any correspondence that are going to be happening during that time. And so as you support them through that process, you can be the listing coordinator. What that means for you is you can be paid twice for the same property. So you're paid during the listing phase as the listing coordinator. And then once a buyer shows up and says, hey, I really love this home, I'm going to put an offer on it. And now you have an executed contract. You are now the transaction coordinator. So that's 2 different services for the same property. So you can be paid twice. Okay. So it's a great service to offer. It couples well with what you're doing already. And most agents need that support. They like that option as something as an add-on. So if you say you do transaction coordinating and you don't know how to do listing coordinating, you could lose out on a client, right? Because they want to have that all-in-one feel when they're selecting a real estate VA company. All right. And so outside of that, you can offer marketing services. And I typically say just offer the marketing services you're comfortable doing. Right. So we started out, we would do listing packages, right? Listing presentation packages. You can do open house flyers. You can do postcards, right? There's all these different things you can do. But once we hired a graphic designer, then we say, hey, we also can do logos and we also could do all these other things. But we didn't start out doing that. We started out doing what we were comfortable doing. All right. So get yourself fancy in Canva and start to click around and get a feel for what you're comfortable offering. And you can offer those things, right? And so there's templates and stuff you can buy as bundles. So my mentorship, REVA Nation, we actually give you all of those templates, but there's also templates you can buy on like Etsy, and you can get some bundles and stuff to get you started. Okay. And so you want to offer that. And then there's just administration, and that can fall into a lot of category of things, right? But some of them say, I need help with my calendar management. Can you help me keep my email organized? Can you help me with my CRM, right? Managing my CRM. And so those are going to fall into the administrative category of what you can offer. You don't have to come out offering that, right? If you say, you know what, I want to focus on the thing that's going to make me the most money for the less time, which is going to be transaction coordinating, that is fine. But a lot of real estate VA companies like to just offer everything. They like to make sure that when an agent says, can you help me with this? As long as legally they can help, right? As long as it's something they can do in an assistant role, they want to be able to offer that service. And so that gives you some options of what you can do, because something may have stood out to you that I said, and you're like, I'm kind of gifted in that area. I would like to offer that, right? Something may do that, and it's going to bring me to my next tip, okay? Because that was tip number 4. That was tip number 4. So, and it also brings me to my next tip, 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant, which is bring in your experience. Bring in the thing that you did before, right? As much as you can qualify that experience and offer a unique service within your real estate VA company. I highly recommend it. Okay. So I came from the background of writing policy and procedures. I was a broker's assistant for a few years, and then, but I'm also known to be very strategic, right? So when I took a gift assessment, strategist was my number one gift. So when I opened up my real estate VA company, I offered transaction coordinating, I offered listing coordinating, I offered marketing, I offered administrating, but I also was a strategic partner. So under my marketing services, if they really wanted to kind of talk through, hey, I have this launch coming up, I have this opportunity to work with this builder and acquire this builder and be able to sell all the homes in this subdivision, I would work with them on a strategy to how can we market this? Let's try this. Let's do this. And so I was able to bring my gift, right? What came easy to me and is hard for others. I was able to bring that into my business and infuse my clients with this unique thing that I could offer that other VAs may not be able to offer. Not everybody is good at strategy. Not everybody is able to look at something in shambles and say, this is how we need to organize this to get this figured out. Not everybody is able to look at an opportunity and say, this is how we get all of the lemon juice out this lemon, right? And I'm gifted in that area. And so I'm able to bring that into my business. And it caused me to have some unique factors about myself. When you have a unique factor about yourself and you infuse it into your business, what it does is it creates a loyalty, and it creates a camaraderie, and it creates a closeness with your clients that cannot be duplicated. Okay, cannot be duplicated. Nobody can do it like you. So make sure you bring in your experience. That is tip number 5. Okay, on 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant. So brings us to tip number 6 on how to start your career as a real estate virtual assistant. And that is prepare yourself to do what's required. Okay. You say, Tiff, what's the shortcut? Okay. What's the, how do I do a marketing plan? But I'm an introvert. I don't want to do nothing online. I want to do, I don't want picture, video, nothing. Right. I want to close them, but I don't really want to be on the phone. I just want to see, how do I close them through email? You need to do what's required. Okay. You need to make sure that when you enter into this sector, that the very first thing you do is some personal development, right? So you're not trying to operate a business with all these insecurities and this spirit of fear and this, I'm feeling incapable and inadequate. That's not going to serve you in your business. And unfortunately, okay, when you have a corporate job, if you're dealing with insecurities and feeling inadequate, you can just muscle through the day. You're going to get the same paycheck. You might not get raises like your counterparts. You may not be promoted and all those kind of things, but you're going to get the same paycheck. Entrepreneurship don't work like that. Okay. Your business is not going to go any higher than who you are. So if you are struggling in all these ways mentally, and you're always trying to look at the short way to do it, and how can I do it without really doing that and all that, you're not going to reach the success that you want for yourself. You're going to have a financial goal, and then you're going to have a human being that can never reach it. Okay. So make sure that you invest in some personal development. If you're investing in a mentor that's teaching you this sector, make sure that is a heavy component of what they offer. Because what's going to happen is they're going to give you 10 marketing strategies you will never do. They will just sit on your notepad because you're going to take notes, and you're going to be like, yes, oh my goodness, that's good right there. And you're not going to do any of it because you're scared, or you're insecure, or you don't want to see yourself on video, or all these things, right? And so I need you to first manage you first, so you can prepare yourself to do what's required. Okay. I'm on video in front of you now. I am an official introvert. Okay. Anybody that knows me knows I am an introvert, right? But I'm doing what's required. Okay. Because what my preference is and what my assignment is are two different things. Two completely different things. And so when you move into your assignment of what you have to do as leader of your company, as the CEO of your company, that might be different than your preference. And you need to be prepared to do those things. Is that fair? Okay. Very good. All right. So that wraps up that tip. So let's get to our next tip. 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant. And here we go. Understand the servant posture. Understand that it is no longer about you in this role. You are in an assistant role. You are created to serve. You are getting paid to serve. You are getting paid to say, how can I help? You're not getting paid to say, that's not my job. You're not getting paid to say, that's not part of the services that I offer. But what you can say is, right, you can say, okay, here, you want boundaries as a VA. You want to do all those things. But when you are in servant mode, you do what is needed to get the deal closed. Okay. As long as you can do it legally, long as it's something some of you are not licensed, right? So you're working in an unlicensed role. There's not everything that you can necessarily do. But for the things that you can do, you want to try and offer those things in your services. I'll give you an example. So when all parties sign on a contract, the contract is executed. That's when you can activate your transaction coordinator role on the process. Well, before, it's executed, the agent may need help drafting the contract. Okay. And some of you are not able to draft it based off of your state if you're not licensed, right? But some of you can help draft a contract. And so some may say, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Right. It's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not getting paid for that. What if they don't accept the contract? Now I've wasted my time and never turned into a transaction coordinator package for me. Right. And so you start to pull into not being in servant mode. And I'm not saying there's some real estate VAs that they don't do that. Okay. And this is just me using this as an example. But what I'm saying is it hurts you to always have your guard up of what you will and will not do, instead of serving your client and giving them what they need. So what you can say, which is what we say, is that we absolutely can draft a contract for you. There is an additional fee for that because it's separate from our transaction coordinator packages. But we will do that for you, right? So make sure you create things that are win-win. Okay. If anybody knows me, they knows I love the 7 habits of highly effective people. And one of the principles that he teaches you is think of scenarios and think of offerings and services where it's win-win, right? So if you were to offer to draft that contract for them and the contract never turns into an executed contract and you're never paid for that, then the client wins, but you lose. Right? The client wins, but you lose. The client is maybe driving and they can't even sit anywhere to draft the offer, and they have you that they can call, and you can stop what you're doing and go ahead and knock that offer out in probably 15 minutes and send that out so that they can get that going. And if they're in a competitive offer situation, you were able to slide yours in first and maybe get that thing executed before somebody else came along, right? That's the advantage to them. That is a win for them. Right. But if you are not compensated in any way, that is a lose for you. Right. And you don't want to create any type of services where you do that, any type of offerings. What you want to say is like what we said. OK, we can absolutely do that. But that is a separate fee. So now they get the ease and the convenience of you doing that for them, because while they're out in these streets, you're sitting in your office, OK, or on the beach or in Jamaica somewhere, because you can work from anywhere and you can draft that offer for them. And now you can be compensated for that. Now we have a win-win situation. So, have a servant posture, create win-win scenarios so that even though you have a servant posture, you still win in that scenario. I'm going to give you a quick tip on how we make sure that we always have a servant's heart. This is our principles, right? These are customized to the company that I run. It's called the 3I CPS principles. And what it's saying is you want to impress, improve, and improvise. You want to impress the client, the client's client, right? The client's client is the buyer's agent is who hired you. The actual buyers are the client's client. You want to impress them too. Client's network, that's the lender, that's the title company, that's everybody involved. You want to impress them as well. You want to impress anybody impacted into this situation, right? Because when you do that, that's going to make the agent look good, right? You're going to personify their name, which is what moves us to the next one, is you're going to improve their procedure, protection, and their persona. Right? So for the agent that hires you, you're going to improve their procedure. So everything they give you, you're going to say, hey, we can modify this. We can do this. We can add this as a marketing thing so that we can build upon our relationships with the client. You're improving their procedure. You're improving their protection because you're taking your time while they're rushing and drafting a contract with one hand and driving with the other and shoving that thing to you. And you can take the time and say, hey, we missed some initials here. We didn't input the date here. You're going to offer them more protection. You're going to improve that for them. You're going to improve their persona because you're impressing them, you're offering them protection, and you're improving their procedures, right? And then improvise, right? When something goes wrong, because something will go wrong, when something goes wrong, can you solve the problem? Can you solve it with speed? Can you solve it with simplicity? Can you improvise with some level of grace? Okay. Are you just as frazzled as them? Right? You don't want to be just as frazzled as them. So you want to impress, improve, and improvise. And so those are our 3 ICPS principles. That's just a little sneaky sneak of me just inputting that in here so you can see what it means when I say understand the servant posture. So I go really deep into that in my masterclass. So if you want to just learn more about what this means and how you can have this implemented in your business, check out tiffany'smasterclass.com and you can go and watch that for free. All right. So that concludes that tip. All right. I got three more tips left. So 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant. Here's our next one. Check your network. Who do you know? They always come to me when my mentees come to me and I'm like, your very first client you're going to get is going to be through somebody you know. And they're like, I don't know. I don't really know any real estate agents. It's like somebody knows one, somebody at your church, at where you currently work, your friend group, somebody on Facebook that you've not thought about and overlooked. Check your network. Always, when you are launching this business, think about, who do I know that knows somebody? And it may be just putting yourself out there, putting that post out on Facebook, putting a story in your Instagram stories, just kind of teasing it and letting people know this is what you're working on. And I promise you, you will get a response. I promise you. I just had a young lady who was telling somebody that's not even directly connected to the buying and selling community of real estate, right? And got offered a deal for somebody that had over 1,000 files. And she's calling us like, how can you help me with all these files? Because she just started sharing what she was doing and it connected her to opportunities that she could only dream of, right? So I want you to consider that your first client is in your network. As hard as that may seem to believe, I want you to consider that. And I want you to put yourself out there, because before you spend $1 on marketing, before you try to put together an elaborate marketing plan, your very first client that's going to pay for the elaborate marketing plan is going to be inside your network that you can get without spending a penny. Okay. So that is tip number 8. We're on tip number 8. I'm trying to keep track of the number here. Tip number 8. So let's move on to tip number 9. All right. 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant. Here's tip number 9. Complete a mental walkthrough. This really is my ultimate cheat code on a lot of things outside of even this sector. Is to complete a mental walkthrough. I'm going to tell you what it looks like. You literally just kind of close your eyes and you say, a client just called me. What's next? Okay. All right. You hang up. Okay. They say yes. You hang up the phone. What's the very first thing you want to do? Well, you really want to make sure that you immediately, can send them a contract. So is your contract ready? You say, yes, it is. I actually have it in Word. It's okay, but that's not how you're going to send it for them to sign it. So how are you going to send them for them to sign it? Oh, okay, you're right. Okay, I need to invest in DocuSign or HelloSign or some of these, Adobe has its own signing agent. Okay, let me get it loaded in there. Get it where all you have to do is input their name, their address, and the signatures already know where to be because you're using a template. Go ahead and get that loaded and ready to go. When you're doing the mental walkthrough is when you're going to catch that's going to slow you down. You need to get that ready now. You're like, okay, got it. Okay, knock that off. And then you think to yourself, okay, what's the very next thing I'm going to do? Well, I mean, I want to get started with them. Okay, how are you going to do that? Okay, I'm going to email them and tell them, these are the things I need. Is that the most efficient way to do it? Right? Maybe we could do a form, right? Where then it's added to a spreadsheet. Now you have a spreadsheet that has all this contact information for your clients and how their best way that they want to be communicated with. Maybe you ask about their hobbies and things they like. So you know what kind of gifts to get them around the holidays. How can we make this an efficient process? How can we put this in maybe a form, right? So it's like you really walk through every process in your business. So that's onboarding a client, onboarding a new TC, working your first transaction coordinator file. If you're in my mentorship, I'm giving you that system, but most of you are doing this on your own, right? So you need to think through a real life scenario and you have to think through every single step. Just slow your brain down and think through every single step and make sure that you have something in place for it. I mean, it's really that simple and it sounds kind of like elementary and it works wonders. You'll do it and you'll realize that you wrote 2 pages of notes of things that you want to make sure you have established. Make things that you want to make sure you have automated, templates and emails you want to make sure you have drafted, how you want to take what you thought you were going to put in an email and have it in a form, how you want to take what you thought you were going to just send as an attachment and you want to put it in your signing software, how you want to make sure that once they sign with you, they actually send you something right away. Maybe there's a way I can incentivize them to go ahead and send their contract within 7 days, right? Thinking of all those things when you're doing your mental walkthrough is going to have it to by the time you hit the button to go, it's going to look like that you've done this 100 times because you've done it 100 times in your head. And it helped you come up with ideas and efficiency processes that are collapsing the time for you. Okay. So always do a mental walkthrough of every single service that you offer and every single process that you have to execute. Onboarding, transaction coordinating, listing coordinating, marketing. Think about all of those things. Think about them from beginning to end, from the first time you get the request until the request is executed on. What is that going to look like for you? Okay. And it's a really cool way to help you set up your processes without missing a step. All right. So that is tip number 9. All right. So our final tip on the 10 tips to starting your career as a real estate virtual assistant is this: practice closing, then practice some more, then call your friends and practice again. Practice closing. Call as many people as you can, or even with your family, all right, in your own home, and say, act like a real estate agent. I want to practice my close. I want to practice. I want you to ask me all kind of crazy questions. I want you to have an attitude on one example. I want you to be nice and sweet as pie on the next example. I want you to be, I can barely pull a word out of you on the next example. Be all these different personalities for me so that I can practice how to close different personalities, different people with different temperaments, closing somebody that's very detail oriented, closing somebody that's a talker and is talking all over you, closing somebody that's being very direct and it seems like it's a lot of tension in the conversation. You need to understand how to close all of those people. You have to practice closing. Let me tell you why. Because if you don't, then you're going to be practicing on real potential clients. And if you were to fail, as you practice on real potential clients, you can lose out on a lot of money. This sector is different than somebody that sells shoes. You had an attitude when they walked in the store, you missed out on the $80. They're gone and they're going to go somewhere else and it's fine, right? You missed out on $80. If you mess up on closing a TC client, you can miss out on thousands of dollars that you could have made for years. you do not want to practice on real clients, right? You do not want to practice on a real potential client. You want to have your posture right. You want to have your presentation right. You want to know how to answer those questions when they're digging deep and pulling through all your services and your checklists and they're asking all these random questions. You want to be prepared for anything that they have to say. As a bonus, if you actually know some real estate agents, those are the best ones, of course, to get your practice with, because they're going to be very honest with you. They're going to ask you the real things that they're really going through, and they're going to make sure that you have proper responses, because they're going to know what agents want to hear, right? So that is my final tip, okay, on 10 tips, okay, to start your career as a real estate virtual assistant. That is my final tip. I pray and hope that this was helpful to you. If you enjoyed this information, please like and subscribe. Please leave me some comments below on the tip that you got the most out of, and some feedback on how you got the most out of this information. I appreciate you. If you want to learn how I could be your coach, all you have to do is go to tiffanysmasterclass.com. All right. Attend my free masterclass, because I'm going to go deeper into the sector and what it can offer. And you can really just make a connection on if this is the thing for you. Right. And if that's the case, then we can lock in at the masterclass. All right. I'm Tiffany Haynes, and I'll see you next time.